A History of Belkzen. The history of the Orcs of Belkzen dates back to the Earthfall Cataclysm and the Dwarven quest for the sky. Prior to the Earthfall, Orcs were a subterranean race, dwelling in the tunnels and caverns of Narvoth. In this underground realm, they honed their skills in combat and warfare through fierce conflicts with the other Darklands peoples over resources and territory. Earthfall changed everything, however. When the meteor known as the Starstone struck Golarion, its impact was felt deep in the earth, and it was taken as a sign by the deep-dwelling dwarves that they had to undertake a great religious pilgrimage known as the Quest for the Sky. The Orc kingdoms of Narvoth lay between the dwarves and the surface, and the Orcs found themselves engaged against a foe that was both as determined as they were, and with superior smithing skills which led to superior weapons and armor. The relentless dwarves gradually pushed the Orcs towards the surface, until the Orcs had no choice but to retreat to the surface themselves. The greatest numbers of them emerged along the Mindspin and Menador mountains of central Avistan, lands that had belonged to the humans of the Kelid ethnicity for thousands of years prior. This occurred in the year -5102. On the surface of Golarion, the Orcs encountered a desolate landscape, and here, centuries after the Earthfall had plunged the surface world into chaos, thick fog and dust clouds still covered the earth and blotted out the light of the sun. The surviving Kelid tribes clung together for protection in scattered communities, offering little resistance to the battle-hardened Orcs. The Orcs' superior dark vision, developed from millennia of living underground, gave them a distinct advantage over the humans of central Avistan. Word spread among the Orcs remaining in the Darklands that life on the surface promised to be easier, leading them to abandon their ancient homes en masse and joining their brethren above. About 4 years after the Orcs built their first surface keep, known as the Deep Gate, the Orcs encountered another native people to the lowlands of central Avistan, who put up much more of a fight: the Stone Giants. Before the Orcs were pushed from their Darklands homes, and before the Earthfall, the western reaches of Belkzen were ruled by the Rune Lords of Thassalon. See my Varisia Deepdive video for more details on this. Wizards of unmatched power, the Rune Lords built their empire on the backs of slaves, many of whom were giants. They used the giants to build the countless gargantuan monuments and structures that still dot the landscapes of Varisia and Belkzen. When the end of that empire came, many giants died along with the humans, but small groups survived in faraway mountain strongholds. It had taken the stone giants a while to realize quite how many Orcs were emerging from the depths of the earth, but soon enough it became evident that the Kelids were no match for them, and if they did not intervene, the Orcs would soon rule the land. In -5088, the stone giants convened an assembly to address the looming threat. The council reached a unanimous decision. The giants would descend from their mountain strongholds to vanquish the troublesome creatures responsible for the threat, and seal the breach through which they were emerging. With resounding horn blasts, the giant army descended from their mountain homes into the plains of Tolik, now known as the Dirt Sea, catching the Orc Hordes by surprise. Initial skirmishes overwhelmingly favored the giants, pushing the Orc forces back towards the Deep Gate. It was in this valley that the giants discovered the imposing fortress that the Orcs had constructed over the entrance to the Darklands, and the giants promptly laid siege to it. Here, however, the Orcs had the advantage, employing massive war machines mounted on the fortress's colossal curtain wall to bring down the giant forces. The Orc victory over the giants at the First Battle of Deepgate marked the beginning of the First Orc Golden Age. This period, known among Orcs as the Sacking, is considered among them a legendary era of dominance over the lands of central Avistan. The dwarves, however, were not far behind. The dwarves finally completed their quest for the sky in -4987, and emerged into a land controlled by their ancient foes, whom they had wrongly believed they had defeated when they sacked their chief holdings in Narvoth decades earlier. The dwarves and the Orcs reignited their old enmities, and began to clash once again. To commemorate their arduous journey and defend the entrances they had forged to the Darklands, the dwarves constructed massive fortress cities called Sky Citadels. These colossal defensive structures became prime targets for the Orcs. But despite their numerical advantage, the Orcs failed to capture them. The conflict eventually reached a standstill, with the dwarves holding their Sky Citadels, but the Orcs ruling much of the lands between them. Around -4294, the dust began to subside, and the Age of Darkness slowly ended. As the light crept back into the world, the Orcs struggled against it. These early Orcs could not tolerate the sunlight, and even today they dislike it, and the dwarves seized the opportunity to push the Orcs out of the lowlands and into the hills and mountains of the Inner Sea region. While some Orc tribes retreated back into the Darklands, others slowly adapted to surface conditions. They established new settlements in caves, canyons, and deep forests, adopting a nocturnal lifestyle to accommodate their light sensitivity. The gradual Orc retreat across central Avistan would reverse about 500 years later. In minus 3715, a powerful Orc warlord named Belkzen rose to power, and he united the tribes and launched a series of coordinated attacks on the various dwarven fortifications. After years of warfare, in minus 3708, he breached the defenses of the sky citadel of Kol Dukar at the Battle of Nine Stones, and he renamed the conquered city Urgir. This pivotal battle and the subsequent downfall of dwarf society marked the beginning of the Second Great Golden Age for the Orcs, known as the Reckoning. The Reckoning was shorter-lived than the Sacking. Control of Belkzen's territory, which had expanded to include much of present-day Varissia, Lastwall, Ustalav, Nirmathus, and Malthun, was divided among his 7 subchiefs when Belkzen died or disappeared, depending on the account, around minus 3698. Without Belkzen himself to unite them, as soon as the dwarves were pushed out of the lowlands, the Orc tribes and their respective warchiefs fell to infighting among themselves. By minus 3470, most of Belkzen's territorial gains had been lost, leaving Orcs in control only of the central hold. Yet, despite their lack of coordination and consistent infighting, the Orcs maintained control over their core lands for the next 8 centuries. Various powerful warlords rose over the ages, attempting to unite all the Orcs under one banner, but none succeeded for more than a few decades at a time. In the year 499, the Taldan Second Army of Exploration pushed the borders of the Empire of Taldor around Lake and Carthan until it reached the borders with the Orc territory. It was Taldan conquerors that constructed the first fortifications at the border that would eventually serve as the basis of the Bleak Wall that lies between the Hold of Belkzen and neighboring Ustalav. It was in this context that the first significant Orc army after Belkzen's demise was assembled, not by an Orc this time, but by a human warlord, a Kelid named Tar-Baphon, who rose to power in the Virlik Mountains and conquered the Isle of Entepper in the year 861. Bent on world conquest, the powerful warrior mage recruited Orcs from all across Belkzen, cowing them through shows of physical and magical force. The Orcs greatly feared the warlord's mastery of necromancy, and Tar-Baphon would summon vast legions of the risen dead to support his Orc warbands in battle. Tar-Baphon used his legions to conquer Imperial Taldor's neighboring provinces. His ambitions to conquer all of Avistan, however, were cut short when he drew the attention of the ascended human deity Aradin, who fought and slew him in the Isle of Entepper. This brief unity among the Orcs lasted only as long as the Whispering Tyrant's rule, and the savage tribes once again fell into internal strife upon his defeat. For a brief while, after the Whispering Tyrant was defeated, the Orcs threatened to take power in the battered remnants of Taldor's northwestern provinces. But this was cut short when a Varissian warrior named Soividia Ustav came to power, and united the Varissian diaspora living in those provinces to found the nation of Ustalav in 2361. The Orcs in that realm were pushed westwards back into Belkzen. In 3203, Tar-Baphon was resurrected as the Lich King known as the Whispering Tyrant. Once again, he turned to the Orcs to assemble his army, bolstering his undead forces with thousands of living Orcs, who would continue to serve him even in death. Tar-Baphon's rule in this region this time would last for over 600 years. Aradin himself did not intervene again. But in 3827, the Taldan-funded Shining Crusade brought about the Whispering Tyrant's defeat at the hands of the Aradinite champion Iomade and the Taldan general Arnisant. Shortly thereafter, the Knights of the Shining Crusade established the nation of Lastwall, just south of the Hungry Mountains. 2 centuries later, in 4043, another warlord emerged to carve an empire for himself among the lands of the Orcs of Belkzen, the Blue Dragon Khazavon. He conquered the Orc capital of Urgir, but he made his seat of power the newly constructed fortress of Scarwall in the north of the country. Khazavon demanded that neighboring nations Lastwall and Ustalav submit to him and his Orc army, threatening to ignite another age of war, as Tar-Baphon had done before him. Before he could carry out his threat, Khazavon was sought out in his castle and slain by champions from Lastwall. In the course of this victory, the knights also managed to take the ancient Orc hold of Urgir. In the wake of this victory against another Belkzen tyrant, the Knights of Lastwall established the Sun Wall. The Sun Wall served as the first of the great fortress barriers that marked the northern border of Lastwall and fenced the Orcs into their savage realm. Not just a defense for the people of Lastwall, the Sun Wall also protected much of the westernmost border of Ustalav, serving as a far greater deterrent against the Orcs than Ustalav's own uneven line of fortresses known as the Bleak Wall. As such, the Easterners eagerly contributed to the Sun Wall's construction, their greatest contribution being the cathedral-like fortress called the Valor Forge. In 4237, an alliance of Orc warchiefs were able to sweep through the Sun Wall defenses, successfully reclaiming Urgir. This intense conflict reached its climax during the Battle of Last Hope. General Harkist, a knight captain from Lastwall, firmly entrenched his forces along the banks of the River Esk, establishing a new border, known as Harkist's Blockade. Notable skirmishes during this period included the Battle of the Burning Child and the Battle of the Bleeding Stones. Meanwhile, south of Lastwall, from 4305 to 4410, the Chelish Everwar expansion brought the Chelish Empire northwards until it bordered Lastwall along the Turandel River. In 4482, Harkist's blockade was breached, resulting in a fiercely contested border zone between Belkzen and Lastwall, which endured for more than 3 decades, and by 4515, Lastwall had re-established its boundary defenses, positioning them along the fortifications known as the Horde Line, situated on the southern banks of the Kestrel River. Just 2 years later, the Horde Line also succumbed to relentless Orc onslaughts, leading to the establishment of Lastwall's final borders. These final borders also pushed Orc territory directly into contact with the Empire of Cheliax in its southernmost regions. Although most of the humans living in the territories formerly held by Lastwall abandoned their lands, in 4518 the citizens of the town of Trunau refused to leave. They built wooden palisades and ramparts, surrounding the defenses with pits and stakes, and defended the walls of their town with great ferocity. The Orc invaders eventually gave up besieging the town and simply started circumnavigating it. Those Orcs who began to trade with the inhabitants began naming the settlement Manhome, an odd human outpost in otherwise Orc-controlled lands. In 4606, prophecy died. Among the Orcs of Belkzen, a 20-year-long period of bloody warfare erupted, known generally as the Culling today. Cheliax entered into a civil war. Before the end of it, various parts of the old Chelish Empire became independent, and by 4655, the kingdom south of Belkzen became the newly independent kingdom of Nirmathus, founded when a half-elf trapper named Irgal Nirmath led his people through a successful secession. More details on the Nirmathi Freedom War can be found in my Nirmathus and Malthun deep dive video. In 4670, Nirmathi explorers discovered the Thessalonian ruin of Seknevali while traversing the Mindspin Mountains. Soon, academics from across Avistan established a permanent research outpost in the ancient city. In 4682, 2 significant dragons came to the Hold of Belkzen, the red dragons Sheblis and Terkalis, claiming the ruins of the ancient Thessalonian fortress Rashka Tor, high in the Tusk Mountains. Although the mated Reds never had the same ambition for domination held by the blue dragon Kazavon, nonetheless a good portion of the northeastern Belkzen region remains under their dominion to this very day. In 4692, Grask Uldeth took control of the powerful Empty Hand tribe, and became the new overlord of the city of Urgir. Overlord Uldeth was not your typical Orc warchief, and he began to implement many reforms as overlord, bringing a semblance of civilization to both the Orc city and the greater Hold of Belkzen. One notable example occurred 2 years later in 4694, when Freedom Town was founded by humans belonging to the Sharps Gang, a notorious criminal syndicate operating in the Eye of Dread region. Their departure from Lastwall was spurred by accusations of orchestrating an extensive blackmail and confidence scheme. Facing exile from neighboring nations, as well as Lastwall, the gang made an uneasy decision to temporarily relocate to the one place they believed no one would pursue them, the Hold of Belkzen. In a state of apprehension, they settled within a secluded river valley, located 2 days' journey to the north of Vigil. To their surprise, they discovered vast, untamed farmlands, spanning thousands of acres, free from government oversight and taxation. The sole predicament, of course, lay in the presence of the local Orc tribes. Overlord Uldeth, who had recently come to power, had contemplated opening up his city to foreign traders, and sought a means to explore non-violent interactions between his people and non-Orcs. Negotiations with Freedom Town ensued, resulting in an ongoing agreement where the gang provided compensation in exchange for non-interference. Although some Orc chiefs resisted the notion of peaceful coexistence with humans and met with consequences, the agreement persevered. It paved the way for Freedom Town's transformation from fortified bandit hideout into thriving settlement. Just south of Belkzen, in 4717, Oprak achieved its statehood through the arduous struggles of the Ironfang Legion, an Obgoblin army under the command of General Azursi that ravaged northern Malthun and southern Nirmathus. A year later, in 4718, the much-loved Overlord Uldeth was slain by an assassin's blade. 26 years may not seem like a long rule in the eyes of men, but for Orcs, Uldeth stands out as a uniquely well-loved and unifying figure. The means by which the assassin managed to evade the vigilant patrols of the Closed Fist, or bypass his empty-hand bodyguards, ultimately thrusting a blade into Uldeth, remains shrouded in mystery. Overlord Uldeth's trusted advisor and major domo, Ardax the Whitehair, harbored much love and loyalty for the fallen leader. In a matter of hours following Uldeth's tragic assassination, Ardax tracked down the assailant and dispatched him with little ceremony. While Ardax assumed the position of acting overlord, he continues to modestly refer to himself as the steward of Urgir. Ardax now governs from his own halls of the Closed Fist, and he has deliberately avoided ruling from the throne itself. This has given rise to speculations about a supposed curse on the throne of Urgir. After all, why else would Ardax steadfastly refuse to ascend to it? According to another rumor, Ardax has not yet even displaced the body of the great overlord Grask Uldeth from the throne of Urgir. They say presently he remains sat there, his lifeless eyes appearing to be fixated on the blade lodged in his chest. In the summer of 4719, the events of the Tyrant's Grasp adventure path took place. The Whispering Tyrant not only returned to the world, but finished the development of a superweapon called the Radiant Fire to devastate Lastwall's capital of Vigil. Then he sent hordes of his undead to destroy Lastwall and its defenders. Within a season, the nation of Lastwall was no more. Its last ruler, Watcher Lord Ulthun II, retreated to Absalom, and the region is now called the Gravelands. Although a group of heroes were able to critically injure Tar-Baphon, once again he was not destroyed. Instead, he retreated to lick his wounds in the Isle of Terror. The threat from the tyrant is far from over. When undead emissaries arrived in Urgir on behalf of Tar-Baphon, seeking to reassert the ancient oaths that the Orcs' ancestors had sworn to Tar-Baphon, Ardax wasted no words on diplomacy. As soon as the envoys had finished their speeches, he ordered their swift execution. Their severed heads were then displayed on the walls of Urgir, and their mounts were sent back across the border, dragging the messengers' lifeless bodies behind them. In response, Tar-Baphon dispatched a detachment of troops with the expectation of easily crushing the older orc and his forces. However, Ardax defied expectations by rallying a desperate coalition of orcs into a single formidable army, using Urgir as their stronghold. After a protracted battle that culminated in the decisive defeat of the Whispering Tyrant's forces at the hands of the united orc might, Ardax walked onto the battlefield and claimed 10 skulls from the fallen undead. 9 times Ardax raised a skull into the air before the assembled orc forces, naming each one after an enemy overcome by the strength of the orcs and then crushing them in his powerful grasp. The 10th skull he named Tar-Baphon, leaving it intact and adorning it with cow horns as a mocking gesture towards the tyrant. This 10th skull remains in his close vicinity at all times, serving as a constant reminder of the orcs' shared adversary. The Battle of 9 Broken Skulls solidified Ardax's position as the de facto leader of the orc territories, prompting the remaining orc lords to proclaim him as their new overlord in the aftermath of their triumphant victory. Ardax, acknowledging this new role, has since immersed himself in the affairs of governance, striving to maintain the delicate unity of the Orc Hordes while simultaneously pursuing the goal of establishing a self-reliant Belkzen. Beyond the borders of Belkzen, Ardax has dispatched envoys to the southern realm of Oprak, aiming to forge an alliance with General Azursi. Although such an alliance appears to be a logical fit, negotiations with the Hobgoblin nation have proved to be fraught with tension and slow in reaching a resolution. The Orc leader, overseeing the newly united Belkzen, maintains an optimistic outlook, hopeful that both nations can collaborate and establish their credibility in the face of apprehension and aversion from the human-dominated nations. Indeed, if Belkzen is to resist undead incursions or opportunistic assaults from its neighboring nations, it must set aside old wounds and forge new alliances to bolster its defenses. The Belkzen Gazetteer. The Hold of Belkzen can be divided into 4 regions. The northern reaches west of the Flood Road are commonly referred to as the Smokespur. East of this flood road, they are called the Whisperfall territories. Its vast central section, including the Orc capital of Urgir, is called the Blood Plains, and south of this are the Conquered Lands, which were once a part of the former nation of Lastwall. While Belkzen does boast a number of cities and smaller settlements, the majority of Orc tribes maintain a semi-nomadic lifestyle. Their annual movements can be categorized into 2 distinct phases, the Proving Time and the Flood Truce. The Proving Time spans from early fall to early spring, characterized by friendly but violent clashes between tribes. Orcs relish combat, and many orcs believe that the only legitimate way to possess something is to seize it through force. Tribes frequently engage in raids against one another, seeking food, supplies, and weapons. The other significant season is known as the Flood Truce, occurring sometime between late spring and late summer, coinciding with the first flash flood that transforms the Flood Road into a much wider river, bringing with it significant migratory game. During this period, orc tribes migrate to the banks of the Flood Road in central Belkzen to hunt the wild aurochs and other beasts. The Flood Truce strictly prohibits warfare and mass violence, as the game serves as the Orcs' most dependable source of meat and leather for the entire year. Orcs also use this time to seek mates from other tribes, and occasionally form new tribal alliances or ignite fresh feuds. Let's take a closer look at the 4 major territories of Belkzen. Smokespur. The Smokespur territory harbors some of the most striking locations in the entire region. Stretching across the northwestern expanse of Belkzen, and bordered on its eastern side by the Flood Road, this area is dominated by the second largest city in the hold, Wyvernsting. To the north of Smokespur lie the Algid Wastes, a domain populated by colossal creatures, which are reared to serve as the mighty war beasts of the Orcs. Wyvernsting. Situated as the northernmost Orc settlement, this city holds a significant position, not just in the Smokespur territory, but within the entirety of Belkzen. Its prominence is due to its proximity to timber-rich forests, its access to the megafauna of the Algid Wastes to the north, and the convenient access to the Flood Road in the east. In terms of significance to the Orc nation, it ranks second only to the capital of Urgir. Wyvernsting is constructed into the northeastern foothills of the Kodar Mountains, near the entrance of Cleftbone Canyon. The towering and steep mountains cast a shadow over the city, which is appreciated by the light-sensitive Orcs and allows them to remain active during daylight hours without discomfort. The surrounding canyon walls are riddled with numerous chambers and tunnels, serving as the dwelling grounds for the countless wyvern riders of the Wingripper tribe, close allies of the city's ruling Murdered Child tribe. Wyvernsting itself consists of 2 small hills enclosed by a double palisade wall. Nestled next to the imposing Darkwater Lake, the inner wall encompasses Fort Hundux, a sturdy 2-story stone keep serving as the headquarters for Chief Hundux and his lieutenants. Nearby lies Hagtooth Hill, where members of the Murdered Child tribe live and train. An outer wall encircles the rest of the city, encompassing key areas such as the Market, the city's bustling trade hub, Downside, the home to the majority of the non-ruling Orcs, Back Hill, where most non-Orcs in Wyvernsting reside, and Stockside, the location where megafauna for sale in the markets are housed. Leading the city is Chief Hundux Halfman of the Murdered Child tribe, a brilliant half-orc tactician whose ambitions led many to believe he might challenge Grask Uldeth for supremacy, before Uldeth's untimely demise. Now Hundux turns his attention northwards. Following in the example of both Uldeth and his successor Ardax, Hundux is positioning himself as a tolerant pro-trade leader who can build lasting relationships with the nations north of Belkzen. He has brokered alliances with significant followings among the Mammoth Lords, and with Pola the Bureaucrat, the Chan Lord of Icedare. See my Mammoth Lords Deepdive video for more details on these. He has also been building up a friendly relationship with the Witches of Irison, and with Rune Lord Sorshan of nearby Eurythnia, whose capital city of Zin Shalast is located close by as well. Finally, he has also succeeded in securing alliances with the region's giant tribes, notably Chief Delka the Thorn, the leader of a small band of taiga giant hunters, whose territories stretch across the Algid Wastes, and who herd various large beasts into the city for sale in Wyvernsting markets on a semi-regular basis. Chief Hundux's ability to secure these strategic alliances with foreign powers has only grown the wealth and importance of Wyvernsting. In addition to Chief Hundux, there are 2 other influential figures in the city. The first is Gren Tuax, Wyvernsting's elder shaman, who is also rumored to be Hundux's half-brother. The second is the city's High Cleric of Lanishra, the tyrannical Orc god of rulership. Makoa the Gentle she is called, and she also serves double duty as the Master of the Pit, the city's large, vertically constructed fighting arena. In addition to being the Lord of Wyvernsting, Hundux Halfman is the tribal chief of the entire Murdered Child tribe. He became war chief in 4706, and his 17-year tenure makes him one of the eldest tribal war chiefs in the entirety of the Hold. Historically, since his takeover of the Murdered Child tribe, he would frequently go to war against Grask Uldeth's more powerful Empty Hand tribe during the Proving Time. Hundux would use these moments as opportunities to study the Empty Hand tribe's tactics and hone his own skills as a field commander. He was always careful to minimize his losses and never committed his most powerful warriors, weapons, and war beasts to these clashes. Now that the much-loved Uldeth is dead, he has recharacterized these conflicts, not as a rivalry at all, but as conflicts of mutual respect in which the 2 veteran commanders learned much from each other. The other dominant tribe in Wyvernsting are the Wingrippers, whose forebears founded the town itself. They are renowned for having honed their expertise in the art of taming and riding the wyverns of Cleftbone Canyon. The first among their kind to dare to do this was the legendary hero Guruk the Brave, who succeeded in subduing the first wyvern almost a millennia ago and teaching it to accept him as a rider. Training wyverns is a perilous endeavor, and even the most well-mannered specimens retain their volatile nature. Over half of those who aspire to become riders meet their demise during training, either by being unseated in mid-fight or maimed on the ground, thus rendering the survivors a truly elite cadre. At the forefront of these beast riders stands the tribe's chief, Mollog, who commands a weathered wyvern nearly twice the size of its brethren, possessing a venom more lethal than any of its kin. In addition to the Wing Rippers and the Murdered Child, the Icetooth tribe frequently make stays in the city of Wyvernsting, led by Chief Kravog Tuskspear. Like Chief Delka's tribe of taiga giants, they inhabit the border regions between the Hold of Belkzen and the realm of the Mammoth Lords. Their territory extends northwards, where they engage in raids against the Kellid tribes of the Algid Wastes and hunt the massive creatures that roam these lands. The Icetooth tribe are comprised of the distinctive Frost Orcs, characterized by woolly pelts and unusually large tusks, which give them an uncanny resemblance to the very beasts they pursue. Despite their savage looks, the Icetooth Orcs possess shrewd trading skills, making them one of the wealthiest Orc tribes. Instead of solely butchering the animals they hunt for meats and hides, they capture and domesticate a significant portion of their quarry. During the Flood Truce, the Icetooth Orcs will journey much further south than Wyvernsting, and offer these tamed megafauna as war beasts to other tribes in exchange for valuable goods. The Brimstone Haruspex. The Brimstone Haruspex is an ancient temple, situated on the brink of an active volcano called the Eye of the Unmaker in the Kodars. The temple was originally of Thessalonian construction, and dedicated to Mar, the World Thunder, a deity discussed in more detail in my Dark Tapestry video. It has, since the Age of Anguish, been occupied by a group of orc shamans and oracles known as the Endseers. These Endseers worship Rovagug and inhale the noxious fumes from the volcano, believing the resulting hallucinations contain prophecies from the rough beast. Deep within this volcano lies a hidden chamber known only to the Endseers. It houses a massive chrysalis, believed to contain the embryonic spawn of Rovagug, known as the Seed of the Endsinger. The oracles seek to birth this creature, but success has eluded them. Despite their sinister purpose, the Orcs of Belkzen highly regard these mystics, and pay them substantial sums in gold and goods for their soothsaying. The structure of the Brimstone Haruspex itself remains relatively unscathed, despite the fact that the Eye has experienced several volcanic eruptions in the millennia since the temple was built, almost as if the volcano itself were protecting it. The entire complex consists of exterior buildings, natural tunnels, caves, and artificial chambers within the caldera itself. Notable locations include the Temple, the Hall of Omens, and the Tunnel of the Forefathers, featuring the most detailed accounting of the Orc history, as transcribed through a series of intricate cave paintings. The area around the temple is inhabited by the primitive Deadeye Orc tribe, a notoriously violent and xenophobic group. Led by Chief Face Ripper, the Deadeye tribe venerates an ancient one-eyed deity known as Brumash. According to their beliefs, they consider Brumash the most ancient entity in existence, viewing Rovagug as a recent interloper, and they actively oppose his worshippers. This stance naturally places them in direct conflict with the Endseers of the Brimstone Haruspex. The Endseers, however, see the Deadeyes as more of an irritant than a serious threat, due to their lack of organization and resources. The Deadeye tribe's penchant for attacking pilgrims seeking the wisdom of the Endseers, however, has prompted the Seers to occasionally offer bounties to any that can deliver them Deadeye heads. The Dirt Sea. The heart of the Smokespur region is the Dirt Sea, a truly unique quicksand desert, nestled between the two northernmost ridges of the Kodars. The Dirt Sea is nourished by extensive underground reservoirs, and this makes it not thick and dense like normal quicksand, but much more water-like. It was the Murdered Child tribe of Wyvernsting that first discovered they could construct sail barges capable of sailing the Dirt Sea. They employ these barges to traverse its treacherous surface, offering transportation between Deepgate, the Brimstone Haruspex, and Wyvernsting on established routes, though they can also be chartered for more exclusive expeditions at higher expense. The journey across the Dirt Sea is not without peril, as its sandy abyss is inhabited by an array of threats, including bullets, death worms, sand sharks, and the rare purple worms. The tribes here also share tales of a colossal octopus-like creature known as Old Hegrith, said to haunt the center of the Dirt Sea, with scholars theorizing that such rumors might allude to an otherworldly horror known as a Mother of Oblivion. On the western fringes there is a prominent non-orc community living in the Dirt Sea as well. These are the Silt Warrens of the Belkzen Isoki. These diminutive ratfolk dwell in substantial burrows scattered across the solid islands amid the quicksand. The orcs generally avoid interfering with them, as the ratfolk's lairs are distant from the main travel routes, and the orcs find they prove unsuitable as slaves. Those few explorers, mostly itinerant members of the Pathfinder Society, like Andal Gesserin of Malthun, who have spent time among the Ysoki of the Silt Warrens, still know relatively little of their society. Their leader, an ancient and powerful elder called the Hollow Rat, dwells deep underground, and visitors are not permitted to see him. Another prominent orc tribe also dwells in the Dirt Sea, the Drowning Sand tribe, and they have established their camps and villages all along this perilous region. With solid ground being a rarity amidst the ever-shifting quicksand, a typical drowning sand camp finds itself perched precariously, with half of it on an island of solid ground and the other half stretching out on flotillas to expand the settlement. While the drowning sand traditionally sustained themselves by fishing the treacherous quicksand, they have since begun offering competing sand barge services and operate lower-cost, albeit less reliable ferries across the Dirt Sea than the murdered Child tribe. Once a skilled pilot and agile combatant, their chief Greldim has gradually grown corpulent since seizing the leadership of the Drowning Sand tribe. His presence is seldom felt beyond the confines of his barge, where he indulges in a constant supply of food, drink, and companionship. The Pillars of Creth. Named as it was the last known location of an orc warlord named Creth, the so-called Pillars of Creth lie just west of the Flood Road and east of the Dirt Sea. This assembly consists of 11 vertical stones, crowned with flat lintels. 10 of the pillars stand about 9 feet in height, excluding the 3-foot-thick stone lintels that cap them, but the 11th easternmost pillar stands at only 4 feet in height, with a round capstone extending about a foot in each direction on top of it, making it look like a short stone mushroom. These stones appear to have undergone rudimentary shaping using primitive hand tools. Scattered across these rocks are numerous symbols and pictograms, forming a mysterious script unrelated to any known language, although some are unmistakably representations of celestial bodies such as stars and planets. Pathfinders who have closely examined these dolmens propose several theories about their purpose. Some believe they may serve as a form of interplanetary transportation device, akin to the doorway to the Red Star in the Mwangi Expanse or the maze of the Open Road in Galt. Others suggest that the pillars transmit an annual signal to the red planet Akaton. Venture Captain Sheila Heedmarch of the Pathfinder Lodge in the Varisian city of Magnamar offers a generous reward of 1,000 gold pieces to any group daring enough to brave the perils of Belkzen and provide conclusive evidence supporting any one of these theories. The Deep Gate and the Tomb of the Last Battle. As recounted in my history section, the Orcs surged forth onto the surface of Golarion not long after the Earthfall Cataclysm. The most significant eruption of their kind occurred in the vicinity of the Kodars, where a complex network of natural caves connected with the deeper tunnels of Narvoth. Together, the first 14 tribes of orcs to emerge undertook the ambitious endeavor of constructing a colossal fortress crafted from stone and metal atop this site. Recognizing that the dwarves, resolute in their quest for the sky, were close in pursuit, they aimed to deny the dwarves entry into this newly discovered realm. The Deep Gate is effectively the oldest orc structure on the surface of Golarion, older than Wyvernsting, Urgir, or any other settlement. The construction of the Deep Gate took almost 40 years, and chief among the architects of the keep were the Steel Eaters tribe. While the ancestors of other tribes rampaged and pillaged during the Age of Anguish, the forefathers of the Steel Eater tribe tortured dwarven smiths to learn their secrets of stonework and metalsmithing. With these insights at their disposal, vast blocks of black basalt were excavated, hauled into position, and meticulously assembled to form a mighty keep with an outer curtain wall that stretched nearly half a mile in length. 2 immense iron gates, each towering 20 feet in height, were forged and placed at the entrance of both the keep itself and at the gateway into the Darklands. As discussed in my history section, 4 years after the Deep Gate was completed, the keep became the site of a terrible siege. An army of giants, led by the mighty stone giant warlord Ogon, attempted to drive the orcs back from whence they had come. In the end, the walls of the Deep Gate held, and the giants were defeated. The orcs held their artillery fire from the walls to allow the giants to retrieve their dead at the end of the battle. Even to this day, on the well-trodden dirt road that stretches from the Dirt Sea to the fortress of Deepgate, a small overgrown path veers off to the south into the Kodars. Fetishes adorn the path's entrance, but those who venture past these cautionary markers soon discover the path ascends rapidly into the foothills until it culminates at the mouth of an expansive cave. Just before the cavern's dark entrance stands a solitary megalith, its surface adorned with giant runes. It reads, "This is the last home of the faithful dead. May they rest here with the stones of the earth." This is the tomb that houses the giant dead of the first battle. Few who visit this place return, as the stone giant champion Ogon, once a holy warrior of Minderhall, arose as a grave knight in death and still stands guard over the crumbled remains of his fallen brethren. For millennia after its completion, the Keep of Deepgate stood as a testament to the capabilities of orcs when united, but it has deteriorated greatly in the long millennia since its construction. The outer curtain wall is largely crumbled, riddled with openings large enough to render the protective merits of the remaining structure moot. The upper battlements have succumbed to ruin, while the outer walls of the keep itself have weathered only marginally better. Of the many rooms that once occupied its interior, nearly 2/3 have either collapsed or become inaccessible. Despite its eroded state, Deepgate retains significance in orc culture, owing to both its size and historical significance. Furthermore, due to its strategic connection to the Darklands, it remains a coveted control point for various orc tribes. Paradoxically, its massive size and compromised condition render it challenging for any one orc tribe to defend. Consequently, the fortress has changed hands many times since it was built, succumbing to a new tribe once every few centuries. The keep's chief engineers, the Steel Eater clan, long ago moved to the Ironhearth Foundry, and the tribe who most consistently held the vaunted position of the Masters of the Deepgate were the Gutspear tribe. The Gutspears recently lost control of the Deepgate to the Eight Fingers tribe in 4709, however. After their defeat, the Gutspears relocated to a cave complex in the southern Kodars. Their new chief, the mighty Drog Tenheads, who gets his name from the long chain of skulls of defeated foes he always wears, has eyed the Deepgate for almost a decade, but has yet to find an opportune moment to reclaim his tribe's ancestral seat. The current lords of the Deepgate are the Eight Fingers tribe. Chief Herc Skullhacker of the Eight Fingers deliberately provoked the former Chief Bloodhammer of the Gutspear into a duel. The two faced off at the edge of the Dirt Sea with their war hordes looking on. Skullhacker, being younger and swifter, outmatched Bloodhammer, but on the cusp of delivering the killing blow, the Gutspear horde rallied to protect their chieftain. In anticipation of the need for additional strength, Skullhacker had secretly secured the services of the Deadeye tribe, who were discreetly concealed in the nearby shallow quicksand. At his signal, hundreds of Deadeyes emerged from the sand, encircling the Gutspears. Bloodhammer was slain, and the Gutspears were routed. Skullhacker mobilized his forces for a final siege upon the Deepgate, which the leaderless Gutspears could not protect. One of the many challenges faced by the lords of the Deepgate is an infestation of Vexgits, malevolent and destructive gremlins, whom I discuss in more detail in my Fey creature feature. They discovered the Deepgate about 10 years prior to Skullhacker's conquest and found it to be an ideal habitat, given its dilapidated state, offering hundreds of small layers and bolt holes to nest in. Skullhacker now organizes monthly bug hunts, awarding weapons, armor, and additional food rations to the orc who exterminates the most Vexgits. Despite these efforts, the gremlins remain far from eradicated. While the upper levels of the Deepgate are overrun by these Fey saboteurs, the orcs face additional challenges from below as well. A tribe of mongrel folk and fleshwarps took refuge in a cave near the underground entrance to the Deepgate in 4714. Subsequently, they breached the castle's deepest levels. It's possible they didn't even realize the orcs held the keep at the time, as access to the upper levels from the grounds they claimed were obstructed by rock slides that the Gutspear tribe had neglected to address. Recently, the Eight Fingers tribe cleared the rock slides and discovered the settlers. The mongrel folk were quick to protect themselves and prepared a defensible choke point in the parts of the keep they controlled and successfully repelled the ensuing orc assault. This tactical stalemate has persisted over the last 9 years, to the immense frustration of Chief Skullhacker. The mongrel folk are led by Brother Fungus, a skilled druid who possesses a unique advantage due to his ability to communicate with the Darklands' native oozes. This has granted his tribe an upper hand in their ongoing skirmishes with Skullhacker's forces, despite their smaller numbers. The Keening Hills. Just south of the Dirt Sea and east of the Deepgate lie the Keening Hills. These hills have become a boggy marshland, a stark contrast to the rest of the barren realm of Belkzen. But not all is as it seems in the Keening Hills. Long ago, Rune Lord Zutha had an arcane laboratory in the region. Here, Zutha developed a powerful artifact to fuel his necromantic power, its core powered by a fragment of a Clipoth runestone from the Abyss. One of Zutha's apprentices inadvertently damaged the device, and the previously dormant runestone surged to life, spewing forth a viscous black fluid that rapidly flooded the lab. In order to prevent disaster, Zutha summoned an anti-magic field, confining the chaotic energies so his surviving apprentices could construct a containment mechanism. Although this worked, it soon became apparent to Zutha that this was a makeshift solution. Before he could develop a better one, however, the Earthfall cataclysm wiped them all out. Over the millennia that followed, the runestone gradually eroded most of the barriers that had imprisoned it. The substance it exuded, known as blackwater, seeped forth at a languid pace, replacing the local groundwater, and reshaping the flora, fauna, and landscape in its vicinity to bear an uncanny resemblance to the abyssal realm of its master, War Woong, discussed in my Demon Lord's Religion video. Surprisingly, despite its infernal origins, the blackwater proved exceptionally nourishing, fostering robust growth in plants and creatures, yet it also spawned a pernicious dependence in any life that imbibed it. Over time, these organisms became addicted to the blackwater. Such creatures found themselves bound to the proximity of the hills, unable to venture beyond a day's journey away. While the rest of the surrounding region is desert, the area surrounding the runestone retains a lush, verdant allure. But the orcs have long since learned that this place is toxic, and they mostly keep away. The Foundry. Once bearing the name Iron Hearth Foundry, this complex was the crowning jewel among a series of forge holds erected by the dwarves during the period of orc decline when the Age of Anguish brought the return of the sun with it. It was long regarded as impregnable by the dwarves, but in -3709, Warlord Belkzen's Orc Horde claimed it. This was one of his first great victories, and it was only a year later that Belkzen would do even better and take the dwarf sky citadel of Urgir. Not long after the Foundry fell to the orcs, the Steel Eaters moved in, long having been recognized as the orc masters of dwarfcraft, and the most able to make use of the dwarf forges. The Foundry lies at the end of an unassuming valley beside a small lake, its frigid waters shimmering in a striking cobalt blue. The Foundry's towering stone gates soar at a height of 40 feet, a marvel of dwarven engineering adorned with elegantly simplistic dwarven geometric patterns and kept in decent repair by the Steel Eaters. This gate serves as the threshold to what is among the oldest and grandest metalworking complexes in all of Avistan. It features an extensive network of 5 meticulously crafted artificial caverns, punctuated by arrays of enchanted forges. These forges are fueled by searing gases emanating from magma-heated pressure chambers beneath them. Because of their mastery of dwarven forgecraft, the Steel Eaters stand as one of the most highly specialized tribes in Belkzen. While other tribes' forebears engaged in wanton plunder and pillage during the Age of Anguish, the progenitors of the Steel Eater tribes pursued metallurgical knowledge. This knowledge has been meticulously passed on through the generations, culminating in the Steel Eaters' emergence as one of Belkzen's most influential tribes. Even though they rarely partake in physical conflicts, no other tribe dares to openly criticize them. This is chiefly due to the Steel Eaters' near monopoly on the supply of weaponry, armor, and war machines for all the orcs of central Avistan. Any tribe that falls out of favor with the Steel Eaters may find their costs suddenly tripled, or worse, lose the privilege of procuring goods from the Steel Eaters altogether. The Foundry is under the watchful stewardship of Master Smith Anok. Anok maintains a meticulous watch over the journeymen of his tribe, ensuring the high quality of their craftsmanship, but he possesses a jealous streak, and he often punishes those whose works rival his own. This has created the unfortunate consequence that many of the Steel Eater smiths now frequently introduce deliberate errors into their work in order to avoid his envy. Scarwall. Perched atop a desolate isle within the heart of an ancient dormant volcano, Scarwall Castle stands as a foreboding masterpiece of Gothic architecture. This ominous stronghold was constructed by the ruthless dragon tyrant Khazavon in the year 4043, and for 2 decades it served as the seat of his dominion over the central lands of Belkzen. At the end of his reign, however, the valiant Lastwall hero Mandravius, along with his determined comrades, succeeded in defeating him. They could not hold the castle, however, and it soon fell into the hands of the Deathwatcher tribe of orcs shortly thereafter. The orcs, in turn, were driven out by nightmarish undead entities that emerged due to a curse that had taken root within the Scarwall's darkened halls. Scarwall also serves as a significant location in the Curse of the Crimson Throne adventure path. In the course of this adventure, it's likely that the curse was lifted from the castle, but due to it being deep in orc territory, it is unlikely that the heirs of Mandravius were ever able to reclaim it. More likely is that the Deathwatcher tribe eventually moved back in. The Deathwatcher orcs are recognizable for painting their faces with white pigment to honor the legend of their ancestors' flight from Scarwall, a flight said to have turned the survivors' flesh white from horror. The last most recent named chief of the Deathwatcher clan was Uri Sevenskulls, wielder of the magical dragon-slaying greatsword Akraim, though whether Uri survived the events of the Crimson Throne adventure is unknown. Whisperfall. The Whisperfall area in Belkzen encompasses the territory situated to the east of the Flood Road, extending into the towering heights of the Tusk Mountains. Its most notable feature is that it is the dominion of Sheblis and Tirkalis, a mated pair of ancient red dragons that rule much of this land. The Whisperfall region is a long, narrow stretch of territory that runs the entire length of the Flood Road, from its source in the Tusk Mountains to where it meets the Esk and the Path River at the Ghostlight Marsh. The Flood Road. The Flood Road is one of the most important and recognizable natural landmarks in all of Belkzen. Notably, in the spring, snowmelt from the Tusk Mountains triggers an annual flooding of the normally muddy track. For the next 3 months, the Flood Road becomes a wide, slow-moving river that nourishes the surrounding land, transforming it from a dry wasteland into a fertile prairie. During this time, which is known as the Flood Truce, nearly all the tribes of Belkzen leave their primary settlements and ancestral seats of power to travel to the Flood Road to hunt aurochs and other large game. During the Flood Truce, the lands of central Belkzen, within roughly 20 miles of the Flood Road, are crowded with hundreds of tribal encampments ranging in size from a few dozen tents to thousands of temporary shelters. The tribe standards always stand proudly at the center of each encampment, next to the tent of their chief. Even though intertribal warfare is taboo during the Flood Truce, fighting and the occasional death are still common, particularly because so many orcs are crowded into a relatively small area. When the flooding subsides, the tribes return to their ancestral lands for the rest of the year. Some tribes, however, make their homes near the Flood Road year-round. The Storm Screamers of Rule, for example, consider the road, even during the dry months, to be a part of their migratory territory. While most orc tribes engage in ceaseless warfare, the Storm Screamers stand out for their relatively peaceful disposition. They prefer to let the conflicts of their neighboring tribes unfold without interference, so long as their territories remain undisturbed. Leading this tribe is the druid chief Regnath the Green, who spends much of his time communing with the natural world. He upholds a strict code of respect for the environment among his tribespeople. One should not mistake Chief Regnath's non-war-seeking nature to be complacency, however. Those who have made the mistake of directly challenging his tribe have learned the hard way that Regnath can take the form of a thunderous elemental, a terrible force of nature that channels the wrath of his patron deity, Rule the Thunderer. Rashka Tor. Rashka Tor is Orc for Fire Mountain, a place the mere mention of which puts the fear of death into all but the most hardened Orc. It was not so long ago that the Red Dragons Sheblis and Tirkalis settled here, and from their new seat of power they terrorized the northeastern reaches of Belkzen. This pair of mated red dragons first staked their claim on the ruins of the ancient Thessalonian fortress that shares the mountain's name in 4682. Like Khazavon before them, they declared themselves the undisputed rulers of the orcs dwelling in their lands. Their rule was enforced with raking claw and scorching flame. In the early years, numerous orc champions braved the treacherous cliffside ascent to the dragon's lair to challenge them. Those would-be dragon slayers, fortunate enough to escape with their lives, have speculated that the dragons have spies, not only in the city of Urgir, but also in the Ustalavic cities of Lepidstadt, Kurto, and Tamravenna as well. Prior to the dragon's arrival, the Rashka Tor foothills were the domain of the Grey Hunters tribe, but the hunters were driven from the land altogether by the dragons. After crossing over the southern Tusk Peaks, the hunters discovered the Cenotaph, an ancient megalithic structure I discuss in more detail in my Ustalav Deepdive video. That very night their shaman experienced a dream, supposedly a divine message from the orc deity Zagresh. Thereafter, the hunters were reborn as a new tribe called the Corpse Defilers, led by Chief Bugrak Zomash, though the true power of the tribe lies with shaman Unguk Fleshdredge. Not all the orcs of the northern Whisperfall fled the land like the Corpse Defilers, though. Many remained, but they learned to hide when the beat of wings could be heard close at hand. Things began to change in 4710, when Sheblis realized she would soon lay eggs. Initially, her instinct to safeguard her young was to exterminate every living thing within 100 miles, but Tirkalis proposed a more pragmatic solution. He believed that the local orc tribes were suitably cowed, and might agree to an annual tribute in exchange for safety. The dragons tested this theory by visiting each tribe and announcing that those residing in their domain or passing through it would pay tribute at the nearby Covenant Rock. This arrangement ultimately worked, and was brokered in part by a resourceful half-orc alchemist named Drazonka. She proposed making her home near the rock, and marking those who had paid with a unique alchemical scent that would make them identifiable to Sheblis and Tirkalis. Since this time, the dragons treat peaceably with all who have been marked with a Covenant scent. Most recently, Ardax the Whitehair has sent the Twisted Nail tribe north to Rashka Tor foothills with ample treasure to lay at Covenant Rock. Ardax is open to any and all allies that might help him protect Belkzen from the legions of living dead that can now be found at his southern border, and the dragon conquerors of the north are no exception. The Twisted Nail tribe are a curious choice of diplomats in some ways. The tribe, which hails originally from the Mindspins, has garnered a fearsome reputation for their strength, savagery, and brutality. Under the rule of Chief Makosh, the Twisted Nail Orcs have adapted to the high, rugged terrain of their mountainous abodes. They have also maintained a close affiliation with the indigenous mountain ogres and Ogre King, sparking speculation among other tribes about the possibility that they interbreed with these allies of theirs. Given the considerable size of Twisted Nail Orcs, these rumors may hold more than a grain of truth. Many other Orc tribes fear them, and they are conversely reputed for their own fearlessness. Perhaps it is this very quality, though, that makes them good choices to have hard talks with the Dragon Lords of Fire Mountain. It is a tall order, of course, but if Chief Makosh manages to enlist the aid of the dragons in the defense of Belkzen, then the Twisted Nail may go from being one of the most feared clans in Belkzen to one of the most respected and influential as well. The Whisperfall Pass. The Whisperfall Pass, also mentioned in my Ustalav deep dive video, serves as the widest passage in the Tusk Mountains between Ustalav and Belkzen, apart from the heavily walled gap of Valbalis to the south. It connects the Belkzen Whisperfall territory to the Ustalavic county of Wieland, but despite being technically a more practical place to cross than the mountains themselves, it is not particularly safe, and it stands as one of the most hotly contested territories in the region. The eastern entrance to Whisperfall Pass is fiercely claimed by the Skull-Eater tribe, notorious for their brutal treatment of captured foes, while the western end is firmly under the dominion of the Blood Trail tribe. Although these two tribes engage in constant conflict, they share a common practice of levying hefty tolls on any orc seeking passage through the Tusks. As the tribe situated closer to Ustalav, the Skull-Eaters frequently raid neighboring Ustalavic lands, and have even launched attacks on the well-fortified troops of the Firewatch Peaks as well. Gribrick Gut-Eater is the chief of the Skull-Eaters tribe, a massive orc reputed for his ravenous and peculiar appetite. The rumor is that Gribrick's appetite and consequent size are due to how he always tried to make up for the fact that as a child he was so small that his parents deemed him unfit for battle. The Skull-Eaters' great rivals, the Blood Trails, have always wintered in a series of ancient Kelid burial mounds on the western entrance to the Whisperfall Pass. Their chief is Kring the Beautiful, one of the few women chieftains in all of Belkzen, who achieved her position by killing the tribe's former chief in hand-to-hand combat when she was only 14 years old. She holds the honorific The Beautiful because she embodies the glorious orc virtues of physical strength and ruthlessness. Kring proclaims that she has yet to find a mate worthy to sire her children, and travels throughout Belkzen during the Flood Truce, challenging anyone she thinks might qualify. As if the presence of the two warring orc tribes were not enough to deter travelers to take the pass, there is also the matter of the House of Fate. This ruined Thessalonian temple, once consecrated to the goddess Lysala, is now the property of a Lamia harridan named Justica, along with her extended family and their minions. The Firewatch Peaks. Located high in the southern Tusks, just to the south of Whisperfall Pass, are a dozen stone bunkers. The presence of numerous runes throughout the bunkers suggests that they were most likely constructed by dwarves during the Age of Anguish, but they are currently manned by contingents of Ustalavic soldiers. These bunkers are strategically equipped with lookout points, affording those stationed there an unparalleled vantage over the surrounding terrain. The scouts use these elevated positions to vigilantly monitor the movements of the Belkzen orcs and the dragons of Rashkator. In the event of an attack, these bunkers are capable of sealing their defenders inside, rendering them nearly impervious to both mundane threats and even the wrath of the dragons. Spaced roughly between a quarter to half a mile apart, each bunker is interconnected by a network of subterranean tunnels as well. For additional swift communications, the scouts have also trained hawks that serve as messengers. These soldiers exclusively hail from Tam Ravenna's foreguard, dedicated border defenders responsible for safeguarding the county of Canterwall. They undergo specialized training for combat in mountainous terrain and receive vital supplies from Tam Ravenna via well-armed caravan once a month. Captain Josie Morant leads this unit, and she receives additional assistance from the Draconic Scholar and Esoteric Order member Otis the Balding. Gerdum. Discussed in additional detail in my Ustalav deep dive video, Gerdum represents the last dwarf holdout in the territory that can now be considered to belong to the Orcs. When it was clear that Kol Dukar was going to fall, the last king of the Sky Citadel, Durlak II, entrusted the dwarves of Gerdum with a sacred duty, protecting his daughter and the prophecy of ascendance. The descendants of these priests live there still, and still keep alive the hope that the prophecy will one day be fulfilled. They call themselves the Oathkeepers, and are led by High Oathkeeper Darius Moradan. They protect Princess Emily Faldar, one of the descendants of King Targic's daughter, and because of her special lineage, she has never been allowed to leave the hidden fortress. Valor Foe. As recounted in my history section, defended by soldiers of Ustalav's army, Valor Forge rose along the Sunwall, which lay nearly 30 miles from Ustalav's border when Lastwall extended deeper into Belkzen's current territory. For years, the Ustalavs trained and fought alongside their Lastwall neighbors. Although not as seasoned as Lastwall's veteran defenders, the Ustalavic recruits comported themselves well enough. Then in 4237, the Orcs targeted this first castle along the Sunwall, knowing full well the Ustalavs didn't have the nerve of the Lastwall knights. Valor Forge fell, and all within were slaughtered. The Orcs did not remain in Valor Forge. Capitalizing on their first success, they continued southwards, taking keep by keep until the Sunwall fell. In the abandoned and bloody ruins of Valor Foe, something much darker than the Orcs moved in. Beneath the castle lay a dank, spiraling cavern leading to Olvoro, an underground settlement and home to more than 300 Caligni, the dark and degenerate descendants of the Aslanti. At the heart of this sloping whirl of shadowy stone rested an amphitheatre-like temple dedicated to the Midnight Lord. Called the Quiet Eye, the temple served as home to the community's ageless Obe patron, whom the Darkfolk refer to as the Chooser. The Obe's current favoured mouthpiece is the Dark Caller Vidodes. When Valor Forge was abandoned by the Orcs, the Chooser could sense it, and the Caligni tunneled upwards to take the keep for themselves. Thus Valor Forge became the blighted keep Valor Foe, feared by both human and Orc alike. Castle Andachi and Tower Valbalis. Located along the bleak wall that separates Ustalav and Belkzen, the brooding ruins of Castle Andachi and Tower Valbalis still bear enough of their original architecture to be identifiable as the citadels they once were. The first keep was named after Count Andachi of Tam-Ravenna, who led a successful defense of Ustalav in the 41st century before being betrayed by his head general, who turned out to be the Blue Dragon conqueror Kazavon. The second, the Tower of Valbalis, was the southernmost keep constructed by the Ustalavis, right beside the dangerous Witchgate Forest, which served as another natural and theoretically impassable barrier to their land. Just as with Valor Foe, these two keeps are now avoided, as it is known that there are worse things now than Orcs lurking amid their shattered stones. Speaking of the Witchgate, not all Orcs fear the forest here. Notably, the Open Barrow tribe frequently launch raids into Ustalav, and to elude border patrols these Orcs have learned to navigate the Witchgate or to skirt the sinister and haunted Virlik Mountains, a practice that many suspect has had a macabre influence on the Open Barrow tribe. Indeed, the tribe's chieftain, Mazok Skullface, actively encourages the pursuit of necromancy within his ranks. Elder Shaman Krezima stands as Mazok's mate and principal advisor, and she possesses the ability to command a great number of zombies, which she employs as cannon fodder in their raids into Ustalav. Freedom Town. As described in my history section, Freedom Town is one of two rare, predominantly human settlements that lie within Orc lands. This settlement comprises a small wooden fort, encircled by rudimentary palisades built on the banks of the Essus River, a tributary of the Esk. Its populace primarily consists of outlaws, exiles, and others who desire solitude. Although many humans live here, among these residents a substantial number of Orcs and half-Orcs have also naturally settled here as well. The governing body of Freedom Town, known as the Tribunal, is composed mainly of the surviving members of the Sharps gang who established the town. Their authority is somewhat restricted and primarily involves collecting taxes from all inhabitants and businesses within the town to meet the Urgir tribute, the terms of their settlement. Those unable to meet this financial obligation, or anyone who irritates the tribunal, in fact, may find themselves offered directly to the Orc tax collectors as alternative payment. Another influential entity within the town is the Union of the Open Palm, a rapidly expanding cult dedicated to Mammon, the archdevil of greed. This cult is led by a persuasive individual named Merotis, the Voice in Silver, who relocated to Freedom Town a few years ago, offering low-interest loans. His methods have since ensnared a significant number of Freedom Town's inhabitants in a relentless cycle of debts from which they cannot extricate themselves. The most important Orc tribe operating near the city of Freedom Town are the Cleft Heads tribe. The Cleft Heads tribe aligned themselves with the Empty Hand tribe just after Grask Uldeth came into power in Urgir. They were tasked by the great overlord of Urgir to be the tax collectors of Freedom Town. Naturally, the tribe's current leader, Khazard the Drover, takes a healthy cut of this tax himself. Regardless of whether Uldeth's successor, Ardax the Whitehair, is aware of this skimming or not, he has not yet made moves to replace Khazard and the Cleftheads as the chief tax collectors for the human settlement. The Cleftheads have grown fat, lazy, and unwarlike from their position as tax collectors, and a great many of Khazard's warriors have become alcoholics who drift in and out of Freedom Town's various tap rooms. The Ghostlight Marsh. The Ghostlight Marsh is a vast tract of swampland along the shores of the River Esk. The border between the Hold of Belkzen and the Gravelands lies along the swamp, and curiously the swamp is avoided not just by both orcs and humans, but by the living dead as well. This is due to the swamp's large number of will-o'-the-wisps, which defend the swamp passionately. There is more to the will-o'-the-wisps than meets the eye. Their story dates back to 4482, with the fall of Harkist's blockade. When the land succumbed to orc invasions, some resolute individuals saw themselves as the guardians of the land, and among them were the members of the Council of Thorns, a militant druid circle who were driven back into the swamps and defeated by the orc forces. Confronted with an inevitable defeat at the hands of the conquering orcs, the druids of the Council of Thorns opted for a final stand within the marshes, offering themselves in a blood-soaked ritual. As the life ebbed from the druids' mortal bodies, they sank into the swamp's mire, only to return as vengeful will-o'-the-wisps. In their new form, they expelled the orc army from the swamp, and have since acted as guardians of the marsh, fiercely protecting it from any intruders. The Blood Plains. The Blood Plains constitute a region roughly demarcated by the southern extent of the Kodars in the north, the Minespins in the south, and the Flood Road in the east. This region is characterized by near constant conflict among its tribes, which frequently venture through the Urglin Gap to conduct raids on the Shoanti people of eastern Varissia. As the late spring arrives, the eastern Blood Plains, adjacent to the Flood Road, become densely populated, with orcs from various parts of the region gathering to participate in the social activities of the Flood Truce. Although the Blood Plains region includes the capital city of Urgir, I won't cover that in this section. Instead, because of the complexity of that city, I will cover that city separately when I finish the regional coverage. Blisterwell. Blisterwell is a city situated atop an ancient dwarven mine in the southeastern foothills of the Kodars. Its origins trace back to minus 4213, when Koldukar prospectors founded the mine of Yerengoff. This mine was the vital source of iron, copper, and lead that fueled the early growth of the Sky Citadel. Centuries later, Yerengoff fell to warlord Belkzen, taken mere months before his victory at the Ironhearth Foundry. Since then, the settlement has been renamed Blisterwell, and it has remained under orc control. The architecture of Blisterwell is unique, comprising 7 vertical mine shafts ranging from 120 to 200 feet deep. These shafts are interconnected by a complex network of tunnels and chambers that serve as the primary living quarters for the city's inhabitants. Access to and from the city is only possible through a series of stout defensive forts, known as gatehouses, situated on the surface near the edge of each shaft. Blisterwell has been a battleground between the Haskadar and One-Eye tribes since the Haskadar invasion of 4701. These rival tribes have controlled different sections of the city over the years. Currently, the Haskadars dominate the central shaft and the neighborhoods of Forgetown, Soot Bottom, the Pits, Fort Point, and Hungry Mouth, while the One-Eye holds sway over Freshpool, Market Bottom, High Snout, and Broketooth. The ongoing warfare has left Blisterwell in a poor state, severely curtailing commerce, mining, and industrial activities. The Haskadar tribe were Darklander orcs originally, having only reached the surface during their invasion of Blisterwell in 4701. As such, they are more light-sensitive than other orcs, and are more xenophobic and intolerant of non-orcs and half-orcs. Chief Tuluk Clovenface, a cunning and scarred veteran of many battles against the Dwergar of Fellstrock, leads the Haskadar tribe. He is bolstered by the spiritual guidance of Isok Rockcaller, the tribe's shaman. It is rumored that Chief Tuluk made a bargain with the Dwergar king Brithuin before his emergence from the Darklands, though what the nature of that deal was remains unclear. The One-Eye tribe, meanwhile, once held sole dominion over the mine city of Blisterwell, but the Haskadar invasion has forced them to concede 3 out of the city's 7 mine shafts to their adversaries. They now desperately clutch onto the remaining 4 with a fierce tenacity. At the helm of the tribe stands Chief Mulk Dwarf Mangler, who has led them since the commencement of their conflict with the better-armed Haskadars. He has successfully repelled several challenges that arose when the Haskadars unexpectedly launched their attack. To him, the gruesome scars he's earned in these confrontations serve as his badges of authority, especially his missing eye, which he regards as prophetic, given his tribe's name. The Screaming Tree. After Kazavon defeated the Ustalavic forces of Count Andachi in 4043 at a battle in the Blood Plains, he captured 50 of Andachi's officers and impaled them on an enormous thorn tree. Their screams are said to have echoed across the plains for days before they died. With this victory, the dragon Khazavon secured his control of central Belkzen for over 2 decades. Though it has been almost 700 years since the battle, the Screaming Tree is still a haunting sight, a massive lone thorn tree, and the corpses that are pinioned to it, which should have decayed and withered long ago, somehow still seem fresh. In truth, the place is cursed, and people have good reason to avoid it. The tremendous suffering of the soldiers there attracted the attention of Sugros, the Khitan demagogue known as the Voice in Screams, discussed in more detail in my Khitan religion video. Inspired by the pain and anguish of the dying soldiers, Sugros transformed the tree into an Irminsul, an intelligent plant creature that feeds directly on energy from the plane of shadow. Seraph's Ladder. In the southern expanse of the Blood Plains, there lies a remarkable sight, Seraph's Ladder, a majestic freestanding staircase crafted from solid gray and white marble. This architectural wonder soars to a towering height of 200 feet, spiraling gracefully around a central column supported by numerous pillars. The stairs cease abruptly in midair, affording a breathtaking panorama of central Belkzen, but divulging no clues regarding its original purpose. Seraph's Ladder hails from an age long past, likely constructed when this land was part of Gastash, the Thessalonian realm of gluttony. The structure is shrouded in potent magic, rendering the stonework of the staircase nearly impervious to both mundane and magical attempts at destruction. Even if a portion of the staircase is damaged or destroyed, it restores itself overnight. Due to its remote location, Seraph's Ladder has remained a mystery to most scholars, with its true purpose still unknown. A lone documented study of the structure resides in the Book of Serpents, Ash, and Acorns, a rare tome acquired by the Foray Logos in Absalom. This tome suggests that the staircase draws its power from the dimension of time, and posits that one of Gastash's last rune lords, either the necromancer Zutha or his predecessor Goparlis, employed Seraph's Ladder to greatly extend their lives. The Shadefields. On the low rises where the southern foothills of the Kodars meet the Storval Plateau, a single stone cairn marks the location of the Battle of the Shadefields, one of the fiercest clashes ever fought between the Orcs of Belkzen and the Shoanti of neighboring Varissia. When the Broken Spine tribe returned to their ancestral lands in 4519, after an extended raid of Lastwall, the Shoanti warriors of the Skalarqua and Liranqua clans ambushed the tribe as they passed through the Urglan Gap, trapping them between a seasonal riverbed and a cliff. Even with this advantage, the outnumbered Shoanti fighters realized they would not be able to win by force of arms. Desperate to keep the Orcs out of Shoanti lands, the shamans of the Liranqua sacrificed their lives, along with a score of their bravest warriors, in a ceremony that would forever bind their spirits to the land. The Orcs surged westward, only to be confronted by an enormous ember storm filled with angry Shoanti voices that singed the flesh from their bones and forced them to flee back to the east. These Shoanti spirits never found peace, and still protect the site to this day. The Urglan Gap. Named for the primarily orc-inhabited city of Urglin on its western edge, the Urglan Gap is a wide, arid plain that connects western Belkzen to the Storval Plateau in neighboring Varissia. Little more than a vast swath of scrubland and desert, the Gap makes an ideal field for battle, and many skirmishes have taken place upon its sand over the years. Despite the dangers inherent to the Gap, it remains the only consistently passable means of traversing the mountains between Belkzen and Varissia. The Conquered Lands. Although this entire region was once conquered by the Orc warlord Belkzen, the conquered lands represent the most recent acquisitions within the current territory of the Hold. These lands were once part of Lastwall, but fell under the control of the Orcs in 2 significant waves, culminating with the fall of Harkist's blockade in 4517. Despite numerous efforts by the forces of Lastwall to reclaim these lost territories, they were never able to do so. Since the fall of Lastwall, Overlord Ardax the Whitehair has given much of these lands to the Saranite orc tribe known as the Burning Suns, who developed friendly relations with the human town of Trunau and now hold sole rights to the stretch of hunting grounds that border the Gravelands. Zin Gastash and the Sleeper. Carved into the very living rock of the mountain is a colossal sculpture of a dragon, its sinuous form coiled around a rugged peak, now faded and worn, and overgrown with weeds. Present-day Belkzen residents colloquially refer to the sculpture as the Sleeper, owing to the lifelike dragon's seemingly motionless state, superstitiously attributed to its slumber. Today, few inhabitants of Belkzen are aware of its historical significance, as the above-ground entrance to Zin Gastash, the capital of the Thessalonian realm of gluttony. In its prime, over 10,000 years ago, Gastash thrived as an extraordinarily fertile land, amassing its wealth by trading its agricultural abundance with the neighboring kingdoms. This prosperity predominantly enriched the ruling elite, the wizard disciples who served the rune lords themselves. Although not as extravagant as rival capitals like Zin Shalast and Zin Cyrusian, Gestash was not devoid of opulence. Constructed underground to shield its necromantic practices from the sun's harsh glare, the city boasted some of Thassalon's most magnificent bathhouses, indulgent drug dens, and lavish feast halls, a true testament to excessive living. Tragically, most of Gestash's cities and monuments succumbed to the devastation of Earthfall, and the region underwent a terrible ecological transformation from lush paradise into cold, arid desert. Remarkably, though, the chambers within the sleeper remain relatively intact, although they bear the scars of both ancient and recent earthquakes. Magnificent beasts like drakes, manticores, and chimeras are inexplicably drawn to the colossal dragon figure, often establishing lairs and nests within the honeycomb chambers of the mountain's hollow interior, so few orcs have explored it. Among these untamed creatures resides a small community of Lamias, led by High Priestess Resvensa, a Harridan cleric of Sakothbenoth. Given the perilous nature of the upper levels of the mountain, few explorers reach the deeper levels, where Zin Gestash itself still stands in desolate grandeur. A cave-in, dating back to Earthfall, isolated the vast cavern housing Zin Gestash from those above and below, preserving the city as a haunting time capsule from the downfall of Thassalon. However, millennia have warped and ruined the once proud city. Today, specters, wraiths, skeletons, and zombies still haunt the city's crumbling streets and structures, typically serving one of the 3 Thessalonian mummy lords who still battle for control of the dead city, Holok, Mollus, and Zaram. Heliu's Folly. As discussed in my history section, during a period of Last Wall expansion into Orc territory, the Knights of Ozem established a chain of forts to hold the Orcs at bay known as the Sun Wall. In this period, an ambitious and unpredictable summoner of considerable skill by the name of Warren Helio appropriated one of the westernmost keeps as his personal arcane laboratory. Specializing in the arts of fire magic, Helio bound a colossal Thokwa, an intelligent worm-like entity of elemental fire, and concealed it within a subterranean chamber beneath the keep. Regrettably, Helio underestimated his ability to control the creature, and it broke free from its magical constraints, setting off a destructive blaze that razed the fortress to the ground. Upon the discovery of his reckless actions, Helio faced a court-martial and was dishonorably discharged from the Last Wall military. The devastated fort thus earned the infamous moniker of Heliu's Folly. Following the collapse of the Sun Wall in 4237, Heliu's Folly became the headquarters of the formidable Broken Spine tribe. However, when the Thokwa once summoned by Heliu returned to its hidden sub-basement below the fortress several years ago, it rekindled the flames. Although the then-Chief Krogut survived the inferno, he fled before he could be executed for incompetency by his own tribe. Chief Krogut has since formed a new tribe not far from Trunau named the Bear Slayers tribe, a constant thorn in the side of that town. Since enduring this humiliation, the remaining Broken Spines have regrouped and repaired their fortress. They also found a new leader, the bloodthirsty, nearly insane Chief Hogrot. Hogrot isn't known for his tactical acumen, but his battle skills are legendary, having destroyed an entire platoon of Last Wall soldiers single-handedly once. Given Hogrot's lack of mental faculties, the tribe is now mostly led from behind the scenes by their shaman Magra. Magra has suspicions that the fires that nearly killed them all was not completely natural, and she fears its return. She's right to worry. The truth is that the Thokwa is not destroyed yet, and has been merely hibernating since the keep was rebuilt, and history could soon repeat itself once again. Red Lake Fort. Originally part of Harkist's blockade, the second line of strongholds defending Last Wall's retreating northern border with Belkzen, Red Lake Fort, named for a variety of crimson algae that grew within its moat, was abandoned in 4482 when the blockade fell, and a new border, the Horde Line, was established further south. The fall of Red Lake Fort was more than just a military defeat. In the face of an Orc siege, the human garrison resorted to cannibalism under the influence of their desperate Castellan. The acts committed in the fort's final days echo to the present, and the place became quite haunted. This didn't prevent members of the Twisted Nail Orc tribe and the Heart-Eater Hill Giant tribe, who collaborated together under the name the Twisted Hearts and under the rulership of Hill Giant Queen Grenseldek, to settle into the fort all the same. Queen Grenseldek and a Twisted Nail warlord named General Karguk plotted the conquest of the human city of Trunau in the year 4715, but their fort was attacked by a band of heroes from that city as part of the Giant Slayer adventure path before they could fulfill their plans. The Heart-Eater Hill Giants were mostly wiped out. And we know from the current sources that the Twisted Nail have relocated to the northeast of Belkzen to treat with the dragons of Fire Mountain, but it's not clear who settled into the fort after the defeat of the Twisted Hearts. One reasonably likely option is the Bloodied Gauntlet tribe. The Bloodied Gauntlets, devotees of Gorum, traditionally held the lands just south of Red Lake Fort and east of the Skitter Mounds. For years they had been locked in conflict with human Gorumites along the eastern border with Lastwall. The presence of the Bloodied Gauntlets had proven to be an oddly stabilizing force in the area. More concerned with glory and the thrill of battle than cruelty and destruction, the Bloodied Gauntlets always possessed something their human brethren in faith might have called honor. The obviously weak and helpless were ignored in favor of worthy opponents, and defeated foes were ransomed for steel rather than enslaved or tortured for information. For the Bloodied Gauntlets, a worthy enemy was something to be cherished, not squandered. This peculiar relationship led the orcs of this tribe to be oddly protective of their favored rivals. This conflict between esteemed rivals was partially driven by their half-orc chieftain Azhag and his human brother Aaron Galder. Born on opposite sides of the war, the brothers set themselves against each other in a hot-blooded but hateless rivalry in the names of their shared father and god. Although the fates of the two brothers is not disclosed in the second edition Last Omen's Lastwall book, I like to think that the Bloodied Gauntlets did indeed take Red Lake Fort, and that after the fall of Lastwall, the two Gorumite half-brothers, half-orc and man, set aside their differences and allied against the common threat of the living dead. The Skitter Mounds. The Skitter Mounds, located in the northeastern curve of the Mindspin Mountains, are imposing sandy hills. Here one can observe dome-like structures made of hard mud, towering over 60 feet high in the western hills. These mud domes are constructed by a vast population of Ankhegs, although they mostly live in extensive underground burrows throughout the year, emerging for food or when territorial conflicts pit them against each other. Occasionally during the spring rains or during mountain snowmelts, the Ankhegs are forced above ground in large numbers. They form a destructive wave that sweeps eastwards, annihilating everything within a 30-mile radius of the Skitter Mound's eastern edge before returning to their underground layers. The safest time to traverse the Skitter Mounds is typically during the winter, when the Ankhegs hibernate. Skull Hill. Skull Hill was the northernmost fortress on the west side of the Mindspins, ever established by the Empire of Cheliax during the era of territorial expansion known as the Everwar. However, it was conquered by the Skittering Ravagers tribe, a group of orcs who hailed originally from the Skitter Mounds to the northwest. This was a blessing to the Ravagers, who traded the dangerous Skitter Mounds as their territory for the secure Chelish fortress. Their fortunes changed recently, however, in 4710, when a meteorite carrying an otherworldly plant creature known as a moonflower struck the fort. The impact ruptured the structure, revealing a subterranean chamber and activating a potent magical artifact. This unleashed waves of necromantic magic that both killed and reanimated many of the orcs. Strangely, it also seemed to enhance the Moonflower's power. Faced with this horrifying turn of events, the surviving orcs hastily retreated from the scene. Over time, the Moonflower has thrived, spreading across the ruins of the fort and gradually reshaping the landscape to mirror its alien origin. Reports from the Pathfinders who ventured near Skull Hill have mentioned sightings of lion-like akatas and void zombies moving through the peculiar vegetation. Today, the survivors of the Skittering Ravagers tribe have been forever altered by the alien rock that struck their home. The few survivors fled the doomed fort, but later found that their bodies had been changed by the magic. Their flesh turned grey and cold, and like certain Dampiers, they respond with harm to positive energy, but are healed by negative energy. Their new chief is Mukun the Reborn, a survivor of Skull Hill, and both he and his newborn son have recently acquired strange powers as a result of their alien exposure. Kragnaroth. Kragnaroth is a fire giant kingdom located in the Mindspins that incorporates the mountain ranges of Gorak Lekari, Gorak Shore, and Bukur Karaba, along with the alpine valleys that lie between them. The region is marked by significant volcanic activity, characterized by mudpots and fumaroles, though no active volcanoes are present. It is isolated from major trails, a deliberate choice by the fire giants who prefer limited contact with other races unless necessity dictates otherwise. Kragnaroth is ruled by King Orenox Markellin, a volatile and moody monarch who ascended to the throne in 4631 after inheriting it peaceably from his aging father. Currently he is wedded to Queen Regana, a warrior consort of prodigious combat prowess. Orenox governs as an absolute monarch, but he receives effective assistance in his duties from Bishop Rensis Mobilar, the High Cleric of Zursvater, and High Forger Sigurox Esfeld, who manages all the city's metallurgical work. Kragnaroth's population comprises approximately 250 fire giants, along with numerous human, dwarven, troll, and orc slaves. The fire giants inhabit colossal towers that emerge from the slopes of the kingdom's three main mountains. Each tower stands between 150 and 200 feet above ground, with depths potentially twice that size below the surface. The Royal Tower, the tallest of the trio, constructed from dark grey basalt adorned with white marble and gold, serves as the residence for the nobility, their attendants, and most of Kragnaroth's upper-class denizens. The Tower of the People accommodates the majority of the kingdom's citizens. Situated separately, the Tower of Hammers is dedicated to industrial activities and metalwork, featuring sharp, angular metal sculptures resembling wings and fangs. The Kingdom of Kragnaroth maintains reasonably amicable relations with neighboring fire giant kingdoms, particularly with Ash Peak to the south, a location discussed in more detail in my Nadal video. King Orinox's ultimate ambition is to seize the coveted sky citadel of Yanderhof to the southwest, but he recognizes that his current forces are insufficient to conquer and hold such a valuable prize. Nargrim's Tomb. Nargrim Steelhand was a famed dwarven giant slayer from the sky citadel of Yanderhof in neighboring Varissia. He slew many giants to defend Yanderhof's mining interests in the Mindspin Mountains. Even the fire giant Gundaroth, called Dwarfskinner, who scorched the living flesh from nearly 30 dwarven miners. The famed hero's final resting place is on a high and lonely plateau that overlooks the source of the Runtash River, and a narrow footpath that climbs into the high mountains where the dwarves of Yanderhof once built their mining fortresses in past centuries before they ran dry. It was here that Nargrim had grown up, and here that they buried him. A simple rune-carved stone wall marks his tomb now. Here lies the pride of our clan, Nargrim, son of Torgrim. Called Steelhand, he was laid to rest with utmost honor in 4076. May he be known forevermore as the Giant Slayer. Nargrim's tomb was unsurprisingly an important location in the Giant Slayer adventure path. Seknavali. Seknavali, also known as the Hanging Monastery, is a colossal temple complex from the ancient Thessalonian realm of Gestash. Situated in a high mountain valley within the Mindspin Mountains, this temple complex rests upon a rough rectangular metal platform, 18 inches thick, suspended by massive chains fastened to 3 nearby mountain peaks. A fourth chain, which failed centuries ago, dangles from one of the platform's corners, causing the temple to sway unsettlingly during strong winds. Constructed over 10,000 years ago, Seknavali was the creation of the Thoracic Order, a Thessalonian society of wizard monks devoted to the deity of magic known as the Peacock Spirit. They were safeguarded by the enigmatic Order of the Green Feather, a group of knights who shared their divine patron. Unfortunately, all followers of the god perished during Earthfall, leaving their faith a mystery and the monastery abandoned for millennia. In 4670, Nirmathi explorers, while seeking a secure passage to Varissia, inadvertently stumbled upon Seknavali. Subsequently, scholars from 2 prestigious Avistinian universities ventured into the mountains to uncover its secrets. Those who survived the journey to the temple found the outer chambers unoccupied, but the central chambers were locked by intricate magical seals and guarded by powerful grave knights, adorned in ornate jade-colored armor. After numerous harrowing encounters, the scholars soon learned that the Grave Knights posed no threat, as long as they refrained from accessing the central chambers. While most were unwilling to endure the temple's constant swaying or its remote location amid hostile local orc tribes, a handful of intrepid academics established a small scientific enclave there in 4673. They converted the outer chambers into living and study spaces, devised a modest pulley system to transport supplies and personnel to and from the monastery, and even brought in tons of soil to create small gardens in open-air areas. Decades of research passed, and the original group of roughly 40 academics dwindled to a quarreling dozen members, divided into 2 factions. The eccentric Milithus of Casimir leads one faction, while the elf Arianel anchors the other. Both factions have adopted the attire and name of the monastery's former inhabitants, the Thoracic Order, and have started worshipping the Peacock Spirit based on their investigations into the faith. The financing institutions of these scholars, Almus University in Andoran and the University of Korvosa in Varissia, have lost contact with them for months and are growing increasingly concerned. Both universities seek adventurous individuals to probe into the fate of their colleagues and offer substantial rewards for their safe return, along with the recovery of their valuable research notes. True now. As discussed in my history section, when the Horde line fell, not all the humans of Lastwall abandoned the conquered lands. The farmers and retired crusaders of the peaceful settlement of True Now made a resolute decision not to retreat. Perched atop a naturally fortified rocky hill, the community dug in, fortifying their defenses with sharpened stakes and dug pits. Their ranks swelled as refugees and unwavering soldiers joined, steadfast in their determination not to leave behind their friends. As expected, when the Orcs eventually arrived, they were met with a ferocity that matched their own. Trunau's defenders inflicted heavy losses on the invaders during assaults on the cliffs and log palisades. In the face of such resistance, the Orcs were forced to withdraw to the south, leaving behind their siege to plunder more evacuated settlements. Empowered by their victory, the surviving residents forged a pact, known today as the Standing Vow, or simply the Vow. It pledged their commitment to safeguard their land against any adversaries, refusing to pay tribute to raiding Orcs or the armies of neighboring nations. Their resolve was unwavering. They would hold their ground and cherish their freedom, regardless of the sacrifices required. For the past couple centuries, the people of Trunau have remained true to this oath, taking immense pride in the fact that, despite enduring devastating raids and the hardships of life in a hostile region, their town has never fallen. Over the years, many have sought refuge in Trunau, hoping to escape their murky pasts. However, Trunau does not bear the burden of idle individuals. Only those willing to contribute and work for the community can share the safety of its protective walls. One of the most profound symbols of the town's unwavering spirit, and one that undoubtedly captures the imagination of outsiders, is the tradition of the Hope Knife. Every resident of Trunau carries a Hope Knife, a small dagger sheathed and typically worn on a chain beneath their clothing. This tradition of the Hope Knife reflects Trunau's understanding that falling into the hands of Orcs can lead to a fate worse than death. Therefore, all inhabitants must be prepared to take their own lives if they are ever captured. Ironically, what initially stemmed from grim necessity has evolved into a symbol of maturity and self-sufficiency. Many children eagerly await their 12th birthdays, the day on which they are bestowed with their own hope knives and taught which arteries to sever in the unfortunate event of capture by the enemy. Hope knives are always kept razor sharp and are never used for any purpose other than their intended one, though it is common for spouses to exchange knives as part of a marriage ceremony. The residents of Trunau are inherently self-reliant, yet they all acknowledge the wisdom and authority of the Council of Defenders. With elections held every 2 years, this council is comprised of 6 individuals, selected from the town's own populace. These dedicated council members commit themselves to overseeing the town's logistical operations and defense, ensuring the adherence to laws and safeguarding the well-being of the community. Among the 6 councillors, one of them holds the esteemed position of Chief Defender. The Chief Defender possesses the ultimate authority in all matters concerning the town's security and assumes command over the people during times of crisis. Chief Defender Halgra of the Blackened Blades, a Trunau native, is the current Chief Defender. At a young age, Halgra departed the town to embark on the life of an adventurer, traveling from the Skittermounts to the Broken Shore, and even venturing into the realm of the Mammoth Lords. Her return to Trunau occurred when she was 42 years old, and she has faithfully served as Chief Defender ever since. Patrol Leader Jagrin Grath is also a council member, and is the patrol leader of the town militia. Jagrin Grath is a pillar of Trunau's community. Deft with a bow and silent in the woods, he began riding with the hunting parties at a young age, and soon joined Trunau's widest-ranging patrols. He has become increasingly quiet and introverted, however, since the death of his beloved wife Illa. Councillors Agrit Stagensdar and Sarah Morninghawk are the city's foremost arcanist and its most skilled armorer and blacksmith. They are a dwarf and half-orc respectively, and are both members of the Council of Defenders. They have been married for years now, but their relationship is only grudgingly tolerated by Agrit's aging mother, who laments that this childless marriage will mean the end of the Stagensdar line. The current matron of the Sanctuary of Iomedae in Trunau is the High Priestess Tiari Varvatos, none other than the younger sister of Iluna Varvatos, who was once the second sword knight of the Sancta Iomedae in Vigil. Since the destruction of Lastwall, Iluna, along with other evacuees, sought refuge in the surviving port city of Volumis. However, rather than flee, Iluna recognized the chaotic evacuation required strong leadership. She continues to reside and actively contribute to Volumis, primarily working from the now soot-stained Ivory Basilica. Despite Volumis being relatively close to Trunau, Tiari has not seen her sister for an age, as the Gravelands makes travel to Volumis effectively impossible at the moment. The Burning Sun Tribe. Meanwhile, settling into the outskirts of Trunau and being tasked with patrolling the Gravelands, the Burning Sun Tribe have always been among the most open of the Orc tribes to collaboration with humans. In the years since Lastwall's fall, the Burning Sun and Trunau have formed a close alliance, out of necessity as much as anything else. The tribe's chief, Maja Firehair, had been haunted by visions of a fiery angel foretelling the doom of the Orc race if they persisted on their current path. She has united outcasts from neighboring tribes under her strong leadership and formed a new tribe who worship Sarenrae as their patron deity. Urgir. Having endured the settlement of tens of thousands of orcs in the millennia since its conquest, Urgir, the colossal fortress city, stands as a testament to dwarven engineering prowess. The city's original stone spires, majestic statues, and towering buttress structures persist to this day, marred by surprisingly little defacement. Sited atop a small hill on the plains near the flood road, Urgir resembles a multi-tiered cake, with 8 concentric levels ascending to the innermost core. Each tier is separated by a towering defensive wall, meticulously dedicated by dwarven architects to their gods in gratitude for their assistance in completing the arduous quest for the sky. Each level serves the interests of a specific deity, with many buildings designed to align with the concerns of that particular god. In descending order, the levels were dedicated to Torag, Folgrit, Angrad, Grundinar, Drangvit, Trud, and Magrim. While orcs destroyed structures they recognized as having religious significance to the dwarves, they remained ignorant of the level's deeper meanings, leaving many affiliated buildings standing, albeit seldom used for their original purpose. During the Age of Darkness, the dwarven sky citadel of Kuldukar, renamed Urgir by the Orc conquerors, boasted nearly 100,000 inhabitants, making it the most populous city in northwestern Avistan. Presently, Urgir's population amounts to less than a third of its peak, with the upper 4 levels mostly uninhabited due to increased seismic activity, which has rendered them structurally unsound. The lowest and largest levels, the ones devoted to Torag, house Urgir's 4 main gates, the Market District and the Plaza of the Sky. It primarily accommodates non-orcs residing in the city, particularly those employed in the Market District, and has incurred the least earthquake damage. The second level, dedicated to Folgrit, encompasses the city's largest residential area for orcs, and includes the western edge of the Big Hole, a massive sinkhole that formed several years ago and now serves as a refuse pit. The third level, once sacred to Angrad the Forgefire, features numerous artisan workshops and industrial structures, addressing the insatiable demand for arms and armor in Belkzen. Additionally, it houses the headquarters of the Closed Fist, Ardax the Whitehair's formidable enforcers. The fourth level, dedicated to Grundinar, formerly hosted foreign embassies and government offices. Today it accommodates the Sharpened Axe, one of the 2 fighting academies in the city, and the Black Tower, established by practitioners of Belkzen war alchemy. Over the past few years, the upper 4 levels have become highly unstable, nearly deserted, and plagued by collapsing buildings. Young orcs who dare venture there report encounters with hermits and outcasts avoiding the harsh conditions of the lower city levels. Under the leadership of the much-beloved Grask Uldeth, Urgir underwent substantial reforms. First, he opened the city to individuals of all races, and introduced the token system, allowing outsiders to pay orc tribes for the privilege of traveling within Belkzen's borders. This not only stimulated trade, but also acclimated orcs to profit beyond raiding. Second, Uldeth dispatched his half-orc diplomats to attract merchants to Urgir, offering favorable taxation and personal safety guarantees within the city. To enforce these changes, he established the Closed Fist, a new tribe of sorts, to serve as a rough orc police force, responsible for maintaining order and educating the broader orc population on his new policies. Uldeth's reforms found success within Urgir, although some orcs from other tribes viewed the empty hand as too lenient. Since his passing, however, most of these opinions have changed, and he has come to be recognized as a uniquely wise leader, who was steadfastly preparing the orcs for their new great enemy to the south. 3 significant tribes hold power in Urgir. The Closed Fist. Although established by Overlord Uldeth, whose own tribe was the Empty Hand, the Closed Fist was a distinct tribe established as a security force. The chief of the Closed Fist was Uldeth's major domo and confidant, Ardax the Whitehair, who often acted as Uldeth's steward, dealing personally with any visitors he believed to be unworthy of his chief's attention. Since then, Ardax has had to step up and become the new Overlord of Urgir, a position in which he has excelled, despite his advancing years. Like his predecessor, Overlord Ardax maintains both the position of Overlord of Urgir and Chief of the Closed Fists. The Death's Head Tribe. The esteemed orc champion Makoa established the Death's Head tribe some 2,000 years ago. Initially, the tribe resided within the Hungry Mountains, but was eventually dislodged by the forces of the Varisian hero Soividia Ustav, who later founded Ustalav. Despite their defeat, the remnants of the Death's Head tribe regrouped and relocated to Belkzen, where they re-established themselves. The Death's Head tribe, however, once again faced territorial loss, surrendering their lands in the rugged foothills of the southern Tusks to the murdered Child tribe during the tumultuous culling period. In the wake of this disgrace, the Death's Heads journeyed to Urgir, and eventually extended their services to Grask Uldeth, the newly prominent great chief of the Empty Hand. While Uldeth declined to share the city with them, he granted the Death's Head control over the surrounding lands, allowing them to exact hefty tolls from any orcs attempting to enter the city. Eagerly accepting the arrangement, the tribe augmented its ranks with Ettins, Hill Giants, and Ogre mercenaries. Under the leadership of Ungaunt Helmsplitter, the Death's Head tribe predominantly operates from a tent city situated a half-day's journey from Urgir. However, at any given time, at least a dozen warriors and giants of the Death's Head tribe can be spotted guarding each of the city gates. The Empty Hand. Until recently, the Empty Hand tribe was by far the largest and most powerful tribe in the Hold of Belkzen. It controlled Urgir, the most powerful city in the land, and was led by the legendary Grask Uldeth, one of the most cunning and forward-thinking orc leaders in generations. Because it heavily taxed Urgir's market district, and had a stake in nearly all the foreign trade that flowed through the city, the Empty Hand tribe was also the wealthiest in Belkzen, giving it access to the best weapons, armor, and war machines that money could buy. Unfortunately, Grask's body still rots on his ancient seat of power, and none have dared move him without Ardax's permission. There has been a power vacuum left behind by Grask's death 5 years ago that has yet to be filled, so a council of shamans and elder warriors rule where typically a chieftain would hold power. Meanwhile, the fortunes of the Closed Fist tribe have started to grow, and the Empty Hand are starting to lose control of their grip on the city's trade. What the future holds for this once vaunted tribe is yet to be seen, but one thing is certain: there are great shoes to be filled here, for one who is brave enough to step into them.